Hi. Welcome to Berg Mountain University and the sixth consideration in #Land of Tomorrow, the light of sovereignty, where we discuss the triumph of sovereignty. We hope you enjoy.
Sixth consideration. The triumph of sovereignty. With the native contribution to order, there was something denied them that wasn't those English, historical acknowledgement of victory. The truth they say will always come to the light, where 10 is certainly significant, but 11 and 12 are not related to 1 and 2 as 13 and 14 are to 3 and 4. Why are there 12 inches in a foot, cardinal signs, tribes of Israel, disciples, months in a year, or 12 men on a jury? Those 12 men on a jury in unanimous agreement may surely spread no falsehood, neither would scouting parties of 11 or 12 native warriors bound by the law of nature with right judgment disobey their chiefs. With an even number and one speaker saying if whether a particular native was out of line with a particular white man, finding one guilty meant natives would be charged for damages. The 5 civilized tribes were closer to English nobility than thought and knew that our culture measures by the pound, where what happens doesn't matter, but someone has to pay for actions which cause harm to others, especially Englishmen. So, being civilized natives grew further in debt as some treaties made were violated more often by those of lower ranks. And so, to trade with natives more often than others had to build some type of relationship that was more mutually beneficial than not. Trade in weapons meant protection from those in need of ammunition, so allied with natives, English naturally traded with some and sided with the same. Triumph was in establishing and protecting trade for future reference to a higher standard of living, starting with molasses. Sovereignty is a mental concept where in belief, one is so, but in this perception where death in lieu of liberty is a sacrifice, English knew not where, when, or how many natives danced to our melody.
The mind is a powerful thing which reflected in our stature is communicated through the eyes and explains the earnest belief in our own convictions. As relatively speaking, we are all kings to someone somewhere who thinks the world of us, and if anything detrimental happened many can't wait to avenge them until there will be done. In the Bible it refers to the avengers of blood, where we're sure outside of courtrooms and legal hearings justice somehow balanced out and probably still does. One could say that biologically natives could never be kings, as if they couldn't one day translate what they saw themselves as, because in order to be king one had to be Christian and English, because we have to remember or at least think that those French wouldn't call any native Leroy nor Spanish a native El Rey, though Christian conversion made them eligible. The native diaspora spoke English, French and Spanish as trade evolved, but those made wealth with possessions from trade were not those who established the trade but the tribes to which their kingdoms belonged. As corporals only talked to one sergeant, sergeants one lieutenant, and lieutenants one colonel, reaching a general 3 men lay between enlisted and the highest in command. Natives similar in rank and file were honored to bask in nobility that battle seasoned all the more. Sovereignty is such so that the closer to it is the more so one is humbled, but also the more duty bound to protect, serve, and triumph.
Though fighting for hundreds of years, natives would have fought hundreds more, because triumphing over those English, native warriors preferred liberty or death while enjoying prosperity and growth. Both, them preferring liberty or death and their enjoying prosperity and growth, were accepted individually, but in mass seen as ultimate threats to settlers. With no end to warfare inside their new nation, fearing greater loss, implemented a policy of Indian and English removal. The honesty to afford natives with victory would never happen, as English willed to subjugate others to its taxation. We have to remember that the US wasn't as black and white then as we say it was today, but a diverse community where biological discrimination was seen as an only option for us to claim victory today. Endurance, some say, may have won many battles, but for others the war has yet to end. As of the 574 federally recognized tribes and over 5 million in the United States, 78% live off reservations today. When they rise, maybe sooner than thought, as our democratic experiment may one day choose biology over reason, and natives' triumph of sovereignty is realized yet again in a #Land of Tomorrow.
Truthfully, we could only estimate from weapons distributed the number of natives of English persuasion, but overlapping territories and multiple cultures made numbering natives impossible. As the colonies united and formed states, we must remember that the Declaration of Independence and Constitution of the United States was only broadcast amongst amicable crowds. The Star-Spangled Banner, our national anthem written by Francis Scott Key, was done so in 1814 to the same melody as God Save the King. Partially because the colonists, far removed from the center of English culture, was too from literature, music, and art. For years after the War of 1812, thinking Americans were singing God Save the King, the melody was enough to appease those unwelcome amongst a crowd. Always under an impression that the melody of God Save the King, to natives of French persuasion, more readily called to attention those who heard it least. But before, men do not live by bread and wine alone, but by the word which not only stands alone, but travels through the catacombs of time and space disguised in melody. As English sang God Save the King, Americans sang the Star-Spangled Banner, but who knows what natives sang to the same melody, nor the magnitude of those sympathetic to their cause.
Sovereignty is a mental concept where in belief, one is so, but in this perception where death in lieu of liberty is not a sacrifice, English knew not where, when, or how many natives danced to our tune. We are who we believe ourselves to be, however low or high on a totem pole we claim. Though the war was lost as natives bred warriors, but as native appetites grew, so too did their size and inevitable threat. The triumph of sovereignty is proven in the melody of God Save the King, where natives stood in lieu of whomever as sovereign qua sovereign as any would today.
That concludes the information we have for you this session. Join us again next week for the 7th consideration and the impossibility of antagonism. Thank you for your time and consideration.